Hello, my name is Rochelle Robinson, Mayor of the City of Douglasville. Welcome to another edition of Positively Douglasville. We are here with a local celebrity. He is my great friend, Mr. Bernard, Kenny Bernard. And like I said, you can't say just Ken or Kenny. You have to say Ken Bernard, Kenny Bernard. And he's like my brother from another mother. So I'm happy that you're here today. We're talking to you because it's Veterans Day. We're celebrating veterans. And it would be fitting for us to have you into the studio. So thank you for your time. You are super busy, so thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a privilege to be with you today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. So I want to talk to you about being a Marine. You know, I served in the military, but it's a difference. It's the few, the proud. Like the Army has 400 probably people in the Army and the Air Force and the Navy, 200, 300, but the Marine Corps, it's like 150,000. It's not a whole lot of people that are Marines. And what made you decide to go into the Marine Corps?
That's a very good question.
Oh, well, good.
But Mayor, I think I had this yearning when I was young to be part of something bigger than myself. And I love this country a great deal. And I remember when I was at the University of Georgia, probably a freshman or sophomore, I went and sought out the Marine recruiter to see about going into OCS. And I had missed the cutoff because of the timing of that visit. And it just lingered on me for a long time. And when I got my first year of law school at the University of Georgia, I said, I'm going to do it. I said, you know, this is the one time in my life I'm not married, I don't have any kids, I can be unrestricted, serve my country however it needs me to do it. And I'd come from a family who had served. Obviously, my grandfather had fought in World War II. My dad had fought in the Vietnam conflict, and it just was something I wanted to do. And so I grew up idolizing Marines. That's no knock on our brethren services. I think it's very important as a country that we appreciate anybody that's willing to serve. And you know, they say it's 1% of the whole population.
I know it.
And so every one of them, including their families, we don't need to forget about it, Veterans Day.
That's right, that's right. So you just wanted to serve. Now, had your dad been, you have a close relationship with your father. I mean, it's like you guys are buds. I see you on Facebook and I'm like, oh my goodness, look at their expressions. It's so much respect, compassion, love. It's just a genuine something. You can tell that you guys have a special relationship. So had he been in the Marine Corps or your grandpa?
No, he had been in the Army.
Okay.
But I had a cousin that was in the Marine Corps, and I'd followed the Marines, and there was something about the Marines that I just wanted to be a Marine. And as you know, I was a lawyer, so the Marine Corps offered me was the opportunity to be an unrestricted line officer. A lot of people don't know this. When you're a JAG officer in the service, if you're in the Army or Coast Guard or Navy or Air Force, you go to officer indoctrination school, and then you go be a lawyer in that military branch.
Right.
In the Marine Corps, you're a Marine first.
All right.
And so I had to go through not only OCS, I had to go through infantry school, and then I went to Naval Justice School, and then I got out in the fleet. So, you know, when you're when I was on active duty at Desert Shield, Desert Storm, there was probably at the height maybe 350 to 400 JAGs in the whole Corps. At the height of the war, I think there was about 195,000 troops then. It's drawn down since, and usually is between 150 and 195 depending upon conflict. But when you're one of 400, you know everybody. In fact, a good buddy of mine out at Camp Pendleton is the JAG of the Marine Corps now. He's a Major General, Dan Lecce, up in Washington, D.C. So, you know, it's a fraternity. It's a very small group of men and women who want to serve. And, you know, for me, it was a way to serve. It was also a way to get experience and not be stuck in an office and just do it differently, you know.
Wow, we're so proud of you.
Thank you.
And that is just excellent. Now, it was time for you to think about it. I mean, you were a little bit older, and some people like me, you get out of high school and you're thinking, okay, what am I going to do? My parents already have one in college. Let me, you know, I was like, okay, the GI Bill looks pretty good. Let me go on and go to the Army. But you had an opportunity to think about it. So it really was something that was dear to your heart, and you were sincere because you were, you know, you had to be like 22 or 3 or something. It wasn't like you were fresh out of high school and this is one of your choices that, you know, you had options. is what I'm talking about, and you decided to go into the Marine Corps. So it's something about you guys that's different, those Marines. I have a very good friend, Calvin Waddy, who was a Marine, and his tattoo just cracks me up because it says everything. He's like, kill them all, let God sort them out. I'm like, Calvin. But anyway, and it's always his entire life. It's just a difference with him. I mean, everyone that serves is a little bit different. I'll tell the story about my husband. He and I, when we first got married, he said, Rochelle, can you please let me out of the bed? You like made the bed, it's tucked in, you can't move, everything is meticulous in the house. You know, it's that discipline and all of that. So, but anyway, so you decided to go to the Marine Corps. Tell me a funny story. I know it's like not a whole lot of funny stuff in the Marine Corps, but like boot camp. And I'll tell you my boot camp story. My sister is older, but she was kind of baby, like, and then when I came, I had to, I don't know, I'm the middle child. So anyway, I went in the Army and we were on the buddy system and she was with me, but we were in the same platoon, same battalion, but different platoons. And she was kind of like Private Benjamin. My dad, she was real cute and had her fingernails done all the time and stuff. And so she was punished and she couldn't eat. And so I stole food for her. Don't tell anyone. And I had oranges in my pockets and stuff. And they're like, Private Martin, you go and stay in the barracks and whatever. So the funny story is I stole all this food for her. I'm eating and I'm eating slide. I'm stuffing stuff in my pockets. And then after I ran over to her barracks to give her the bananas and oranges and stuff I had in my pockets, and I got caught. And we're both doing push-ups. So I'm like, oh, this girl. So, but anyway, I tell people that all the time. Now, I get in trouble for my sister, but that's the level I have for my sister. And she had to eat. She was too skinny. She needed some food. So I couldn't let her go without eating, you know.
Well, you know, I wish I could recall funny stories from training, but I will say out in fleet I had some great stories. But my Marine Corps experience started out this way. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I go to the recruiter in Athens, and his quota for the Southeast region is probably 4 JAGs. So when I walk up ready to go, it's like he was all over me. All he was doing was praying I could pass the PFT. And back in the day, I worked out a lot, and I was really athletic. I want to say for me, I ran a lot. Mm-hmm. So past that, it was good to go. But you remember Eastern Airline. Oh, yeah. So the United States Marine Corps puts me and Pete Goodwin from the University of Georgia. We're going out together. Mm-hmm. And so we get on the flight, and they put us in the first 2 seats in first class on Eastern Airline, and we're thinking the flight attendants are offering us drinks. You know, we're going up to Quantico, Virginia to OCS, and we thought this is going to be
this is wonderful.
If this is how it is, great. Yeah. Well, I will tell you, when we landed, as soon as we got off the plane and met the DI, the drill instructor, that was the end of the game.
I know that's right.
And so it became it's ironic because we were so elated with, man, they rolled out the red carpet for us Georgia boys.
Oh, wow.
But that was a good story. And it brings to my mind Pete, because Pete died a few years ago, and I got a call from his brother. He died of cancer. Aww. And his brother said that Pete still remembered that, and that meant a lot to me. So good experience. But had a lot of them. When I got to boot camp, I drank too much water. And so when we were sitting around, they do what's called the moment of truth, and that's when they do the urinalysis test. And I didn't have any problem, wasn't worried about that. But I sort of overfilled my cup, and I spent the whole night cleaning the urinals. I literally started from the basement up.
That isn't good. You're cleaning urinals. They should have known who you were. You can't have time to clean
I don't think the Marines care who you are. I think they just want you to be part of a team. And I tell you, you know, you were mentioning about doing pull-ups and push-ups and everything else. I think the one thing I learned about my country is we send people from all walks of life. If the personalities I met in the Marine Corps are just, and you still remember them today. That's right. It brings back instant recall. But you kind of, you know, while that's a sort of a forced environment, it becomes a necessity to survive together. You kind of wish the rest of the community, the rest of America function that way. And we just all realize we got to work this out, right?
That's right.
Because we're in the ditch together, so to speak.
That's exactly right. And that's what they said to us. They were like, someone's from Oklahoma. They call people Hollywood. and all kinds of nicknames, but they're saying when you're all bleed Army green and you're in the foxhole, you're together.
That's
We're
right.
not about different Republicans, Democrat, black, white, Asian, whatever. We're just all together, and that's how it is. We're going to rise and fall together. Okay. What's the most important thing you learned, you think, in the Marine Corps? Discipline.
You know, I hear that a lot, and I probably learned a little bit more of myself than discipline because I felt like I grew up with pretty strong parents, and so I was pretty disciplined, I feel like, and wasn't a problem child. But I think you learned your strengths that you don't know you have, and you learn how to dig deep when times get sort of rough. I'll give you, for instance, I really am not big on heights, never have been. And of course, you do the obstacle course, you do all kinds of stuff, you run, you eat breakfast at 5 a.m. At 5:30, you're running 5 miles, and that's why everybody's losing a lot of weight.
I know that's
They
right.
haven't figured that out. But I remember the Stairway to Heaven the first time, which is the big, it looks like a ladder, but if you actually got on it, your foot comes off before you can reach the next one. That's how much separation there is. And I'm 5'10", so if you're shorter, you really, it's almost jumping a little bit. But I got in line, and I just, you know, there's something about being a Marine that you can't show fear. Even though we all have, no matter who you are, somewhere inside you fear something, whether you recognize it or not, or whether you want to admit it. And so I'm going up, holding on for dear life.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, there is no way I'm coming down. So I go over the top and come down. And I got up on the top and looked around. And I said, I'm still alive. Then I made it down. And I was so pumped up that I broke in line and did it immediately again.
Are you serious?
And I think the Marine Corps instilled in me, and I've talked with other Marines, I don't want to say invincible, because we all know it's blood and guts. It's about a lot of other things. But a feeling of really esprit de corps, that you don't have fear of the world. Some people have a hard time battling little challenges in life. In the Marines, if you can overcome the challenges there and learn about yourself and learn about the team, learn how to work with other people, learn how to communicate, how to listen. I think you I wake up every day practicing to go practice law, and I don't worry about the day. If I'm in court and a mediation, if I'm having a conference call, and it's not because I'm overwhelmingly stuck up or confident or cocky. It's just I have a sense of calm in a storm, and I think the Marine Corps brings that to you. And I think all the military does if you let it play out. So some people get that sharper edge. They redefine the curves in our life and make them a little bit straighter. For me, I found out what I didn't know about myself, and I sort of faced those challenges. Well, I remember one day they got us up early in the morning, and you know, I was athletic, but the climbing the rope to the top. And I'm not talking about pull-up bar. I'm talking about you going about 4 or 5 stories up on a rope with gear on. Well, you think it's just muscle strength, and then you get about halfway and your arms are dead numb.
Gosh.
And so it's really technique as much as anything. And some people were just fantastic at it. I was not fantastic at it because I hadn't done it. Okay. They marched us out there one day, and they said, we'll run the obstacle course. Whoever doesn't go up the rope, you're going home.
Golly.
And I just said to myself, I ain't going home. And I went up that rope, and I got to the bottom. I was done. I climbed it again.
You did not.
It's just and I think their whole concept of teaching leadership, of teaching you about yourself, of teaching how to make your bed, how to wake up, how to shave, how to do whatever it is all about learning about taking care of your business. And if you take care of your business, God's got the rest of it, right?
That's right. That's right. That's great.
Yeah, it was. I'm gonna tell you something. I remember just the adrenaline flow. I felt like I was could climb. That Eastern Airline flight wasn't nothing. I could have caught the plane that day probably easily.
That's great. But yeah, so you push yourself and you go beyond what you think you have the capacity to do.
Exactly.
And so it helps you to face if you could do that, you can get up and go to court.
Exactly.
I mean, it's not a wall you're climbing, but you've already climbed walls. So hey.
I don't think anybody, whether it's the military or private life or family situations or business, if you've not faced obstacles in your life, and learned how to deal with them and learn coping mechanisms and problem solving. And Marine Corps Officer Candidate School, believe it or not, is much about problem solving. I mean, they give you pieces of things that don't fit and say fit them together and you got 3 minutes and you got to be quiet about it. So the communication becomes nonverbal and it's working in a team. It's doing a lot of things. I think everybody could learn from challenges, and most of your successful business people, most of your successful politicians, most of your successful ministers, lay people, mamas and dads, you learn by trial and error. And,
that's true.
And those trials make us stronger for when there really is a trial.
I know it. If you can learn from it and not get hurt.
Exactly.
You know, and sometimes that happens in life. You have to keep doing it over and over again to get it.
That's right.
That hurts. You look at your kids, you don't want them to do that. You know, you want to kind of, but you have to let them go through some things.
Listen, I talked to a young lady the other day that's going through her first pregnancy and was having some issues. And I said, honey, you just go take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And you let God handle the rest. We all think, and I hate to say this, whether it's raising kids or anything else, we all want to micromanage everything. We want our kids lined up, and you know, I've got 4 children, all very different, even though they're a lot alike. And we've had to learn through the process of just evolving as parents that you can't micromanage every situation. And if you do it, it's kind of like a dog. A dog's not going to find the potty pad if you don't teach them where the potty pad is, right?
That's right.
So children need to learn through trial and error, and I think sometimes as people, we are overly involved in whether it be our children or our business. I have to learn the art of this. You know, it's the art of, I can do it. Well, I already know I can do it, but if I take my staff member at my office and I try to do their work, I'm really not giving them credit for having the experience and the capacity to do the work themselves without me overly micromanaging. That doesn't mean I'm not involved in the process, but I think the Marine Corps taught me from a leadership standpoint, get the best out of your people, 1, by leading by example, but 2, getting out of the way. And I think if we get out of the way more for our kids, our co-workers, you'd be surprised what the team can achieve.
Stop talking, you sound like my husband. You're making me feel like, he said I'm a smotherer. So,
I got a wife that, trust me, she feels just like you do about her kids, and I do too. But I think the little edge, I say the story about JT all the time, and I got to tell your audience about JT, and a lot of people know. You know, he's at Harvard, he's a junior now. When he was...
Yay, we're so proud of him.
When he was in kindergarten, or he was a little bit before kindergarten, I remember telling him, JT, get off the edge of the couch, the armrest, you're going to fall. And he may have been 3 or 4 years old, and of course he fell head first at the plant. And as parents, you think, oh my God, he's broken.
Yes.
He turned out fine, nothing was wrong, no big deal. So we get to kindergarten and all the parents are worried, oh, my kid can read, my kid can do this, that, and the other. And we just sort of, while we read to JT, especially Carolyn read to JT a lot, we sort of let him be a kid.
Yeah.
And he couldn't read when he got to kindergarten. But by the time he got to 2nd grade, he scored the highest diagnostic test out of anybody. And I say that's not me, that's God did that. But the difference is we didn't have to, your kids are going to evolve, and who are they going to evolve in? We're here to guide, to give counsel when it's needed. But if you don't let them grow on their own, they're going to get where they're going to get. I have to tell myself all the time, because we know the pitfalls, right? We've been there.
Yeah.
Sometimes just letting kids be kids is not a bad thing. So long story short, the kid that couldn't read, and the only one in the kindergarten class that couldn't read, he's at Harvard now.
Hello, and doing really well, playing baseball, and doing everything. And so for me, this past school year for Joel, this is his 2nd year at Georgia Southern, he made the decision to get an apartment with his friends. I'm like, Joel, that is not the best decision, son. He has a whole plan in his head. Oh, Mom, I'm going to go and work at the pool and be a lifeguard, and I have this on the side. Oh, paying this rent's no problem. Okay, son. So he's on a scooter. They have these Lime electric scooters. And he fell down and twisted his ankle. And it's big, like, so now who's paying rent? Me. When I said, do not get an apartment your 2nd year. Just go ahead and stay in the dorms again and wait till your junior year. But you know what? He had to learn. And every time we write that, well, we don't write checks anymore. We go online and pay his rent. He's so appreciative. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I really appreciate you doing so. So I'm like, knucklehead, I told you not to. But he had to learn that sometimes listen to your parents. You may want to do what you want to do, but talk it out. And we had to let him make that decision. We're suffering financially, but I think that he appreciates us more.
Sure.
And he understands now that sometimes you have to talk out the whole conversation and not just, this is what I'm going to do. I have a plan. Talk to me about your plan. I see some holes in your plan. What will happen if you don't, make the money where you can pay this $400 a month or whatever? He's like, oh no, it's a condo. It's $1,200, but it's 3 of us. It'll be 4 of us. It won't be a lot of money, Mom. It'll be fine. Okay, buddy.
Well, that's interesting. I went to Annette Wynn the other day and read to some 5th graders, and it was Men Read Day. And every man should mentor not only their own kids but somebody else's and read to them, because I think kids need to understand that reading, we all need to read.
That's right.
And I told the kids, I asked who wanted to do what when they grew up. Of course, half of them wanted to be pro football players, basketball, baseball, soccer, tennis. A few of them wanted to be doctors, a few wanted to be lawyers, a few wanted to be this, that, and the other. And I said, guess what they all have in common? Someday you're going to make money doing that. Do you want to be the one that understands your money and understands that contract they're going to have you sign as a football player? Or do you want somebody else to do it? It's all right to have advisors.
Right.
But shouldn't you be able to read that? And all the athletes wanted to read then. Because if you think about it, reading, and I say this, I think the best benefit to our kids has been music and reading. It just does something to elevate. But I think us men should play an example in these young kids' lives of how important reading is. Because they don't think of it in that context. They think of it, let me get my iPad or my iPhone or whatever. Let me listen to my music, text, And I tell my kids, I say, we don't break down words in a text. You write full sentences, because what will happen is it will become a habit.
That's right.
You send emojis to people all the time, you'll forget how to communicate.
That's right.
Also, pick up the phone and call your friends. Don't just text them. But kids do that, and they lose time from reading. Now these phones tell you how long you've been on your phone.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
And I realized the other day I spend so much time from emails on my phone that I've now decided at a certain time, I'm sorry, the phone's going off, because our kids, our wives, our families, we're disconnected because we're glued to this piece of box.
I know it. Now you're talking about family, so we're going to segue into, you're from New Orleans, Louisiana. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, full-blooded Cajun, transplant here. We came to Georgia in the mid-'70s. My grandfather from New Orleans was working at Lockheed, and that's what brought us first to Cobb County, and then we moved to Douglas County in 1978. So wow, you've been here a long time.
Been here a long time.
Us grow.
Have I seen us grow? I'm trying to think back then. I want to say maybe the population was 25,000 back then, or something like that.
For the city or the county?
For the whole county,
Get out of town. It's 140,000 now.
It's quadrupled.
Wow.
Multiple times.
Oh my goodness.
But listen, it's all good. But I had a great experience at Lithia Springs High School, and I was there when it was a complete prison. And I don't mean that ugly. When it was first built, as you know, it didn't have any windows.
Oh my gosh, it does look like a prison.
Yeah, and the hallways, now they've got doors and stuff. It was a lot different, but we had some fantastic educators. In fact, you remember former Superintendent Don Remlard. Don Remlard was a brand new assistant principal when I was in high school. So we go way back, and a lot of people around here have had a lot to do with how I got to where I am today. So I'm very grateful to Lithia Springs, and I'm grateful to the educators and the athletic coaches, and just was a good experience for me.
Good. So after Douglas County High was Lithia Springs.
Yeah. Well, I was one of the 4 years at Lithia Springs. So I graduated in '82. I went from '78 to '82, but I think Lithia came online in '76. I want to say, or '77, and then it shifted, but I was in a group that was all 4 years at Lithia. Oh,
wow. Very good. Very good. Now, how'd you meet your wife? She's so elegant.
It is a very, you're probably wondering how much do I have to pay her to go on a date.
She's beautiful, and she's so sweet. She's just elegant. I saw her at the flower something, Ancaster something flowers. She's like in the garden
garden club,
and all this kind of stuff. So anyway.
I don't know how Carolyn does it, managing 4 kids plus me and 2 dogs. She does a pretty good job, but I'll try to make this as short, but I say this to show the God's presence in one's life when you meet the right person.
Amen.
I was in Camp Pendleton, California, probably a first lieutenant, maybe I'd just gotten to be a captain, possibly, and I was home on leave. And Carolyn was a CPA at KPMG Pete Marwick in Atlanta. Didn't know each other from Adam. And I'll make a long story short by getting to this point. I called what turned out to be a roommate. I had no idea they were roommate to get somebody else's number. So I called, and Carolyn got on the phone, and I'd been in Southern California for now 3 years. I'd been out of Georgia 4 years, probably.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, man, I really like her accent. Yeah. She's got the perfect accent. So we got to talk, and we had. Then it turns out she was Jan's roommate, who I was trying to get some information about somebody else's contact. And I tried to talk Carolyn into going out on the blind date. It didn't work so well, so she wouldn't go, which told me that's my kind of girl. But the long story short is this. We're both Catholic, so I appealed to her soul. And I said she was going to Christ the King in Atlanta. And a former priest who used to be at St. John Vianney in Lithia Springs, where I grew up, was at Christ the King. I said, if Father Schillinger says I'm all right guy, will you let me at least take you to church? After a few days, I was home for about 2 weeks. After a few days of her calling everybody and figuring out, is this guy dangerous and everything else, she agreed to go on a blind date to church with me. So my mother said, to church.
That's what I'm talking about.
My mother said, Kenny, you're going to go on, she said, Kenny Ray, you're going to go on a blind date to church with somebody you've never met. I said, Mama, if she's ugly, I'm going to pray for her. If she's good,
I can't with you.
If she's good looking, I'm going to try to take her to lunch. So when I got to Carolyn's door, sweat, worn out, trying to get over and pick her up, she came to the door and I said, what are you doing for lunch? But the story ends this way, and I say this. I went back to California. I had almost a year left in the Marine Corps. And I said, this ain't going to work. So I stayed gone the day I got back. I didn't want to have a long-distance relationship and blah, blah, blah. And back then, we didn't have cell phones.
Right.
So when you were not at home, you didn't get calls, right?
Right.
So I get home to the apartment, and the little light's blinking. And the first message was from Carolyn, who I called Mississippi because she's from Mississippi originally. She said, Kenny, this is Mississippi. I just want to make sure you got home safely. And I said to myself, I'm going to marry that girl one day.
Wow.
And a little over a year later, I did.
Yay!
But the story for everybody, all the romantics out there is this. You can't force that.
That's right.
God had a great presence in life and still does, thank God. 25 years of marriage, 4 kids, 2 dogs.
Gosh.
Married a dog or 2 along the way, moved a couple times.
Yeah.
It's been great. And
that's beautiful.
That's why I really pray for marriages out there, because I know there's a lot of people struggling. A happy marriage is a constant blessing.
Yes, it is.
That there's not really too many highs and there's not any lows. It's a nice constant.
Yes, sir.
And for somebody like me, I like constant.
Me too.
I like it just nice and easy. And Carolyn's great, and it. And I probably need to market her more than me because everybody loves my wife.
Oh yeah, she's wonderful. And see, my husband and I met at church as well, so I do understand.
We got something in common.
I know, and I looked at him. I'm like, my friend said, the minister who was on the pulpit when you sang, wants your number. And I'm like, the little short brother with the glasses. That's not me. You have to be this tall to ride this ride.
When I got back to California, I had Carolyn, I guess, on my mind. And everybody said, you're crazy. I was 28 years old, a captain in the Marine Corps, single. no bills, a nice ride. I just bought
get married?
Southern California, and I said, there's something about that girl.
Yeah.
I can't get it out of my head.
Yeah, and that's good. You guys, you go to St. Teresa's, or you're?
We go to Holy Spirit in Atlanta because of the girls' catechism. We've been over there for about 4 or 5 years, but we have been members at St. Teresa's, and we still go there.
That's good.
Occasionally. We go to church.
Oh, good.
So some of it depends on, can I load the bus on time or not?
Now talk to me about your girls. You guys have triplets. So did someone in your family, like my cousin, there were twins on her mom's side, so it kind of skipped with she and her brother, but all the kids have twins. So does someone have triplets?
We think that 350 years ago, somewhere they tainted our blood. We don't know where. I just remember this. I mean, when we found out, I was JT's going to be 21 coming up soon, so he's about the girls are 15, so he's about 5.5 years older than they are. So we thought we had an only child, right?
Yeah.
We thought we had an only child, and I remember going to the doctor when Carolyn found out she was pregnant. So we went to the doctor for the ultrasound, and I remember the woman saying, and she looked, I'm thinking, oh my God, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Something's wrong. Here's baby A. I said, wait a second.
A.
And then I thought to myself immediately, here comes B, we're having twins. Then she says, here's baby B1.
Ooh.
I'm like, B1, is that a fraction of a baby? What is? And then she said, here's baby B2. And I said, I don't know any more alphabets, please. But it turns out we have identical twins and a fraternal sibling. They're 15 years old, ninth graders, and healthy as they can be, and have been a true blessing. Carolyn would tell you they are a true blessing, but she would also say, they have wore me out, meaning her out.
That's so funny.
So
now JT
was easy.
You only have one boy. Boys, you only need one. Are you an only child?
I'm only child.
How did I know? See?
I'm only child, and we hit the jackpot with Jack Taylor, and I thought, hey, we got it made. And when my girls were born, this is no joke. So the doctor comes in and said, and you don't look right. I said, I don't look right. I'm thinking, there went my retirement, there went everything. How do you raise girls? I don't know anything about girls.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, let me check your temperature, and I had 105-degree temperature.
No way.
And I'm sure it was caused by my blood pressure.
You were panicking?
They put me on quarantine from my own children for 3 days for the panic mode, but it turned out all right.
Now JT plays, does he play a cello?
He played, all my kids have played some instrument. He started with the violin, he started with piano, then he went to violin, and then he went to cello, and his cello career, I think, has come to an end, but it was been very good musically for him and all the other girls. Haley wants to be just like him, so she's on the cello now. Hannah's on the violin, and Hope is, I think Hope wants to be Cinderella. I think she wants to dance to the music. I don't know that she wants to play it.
Well, I remember that because cello is my favorite instrument. I love the cello. It's so beautiful. And all my kids play instruments as well.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it really helps, I think, cognitive or whatever with that balance with your left and right side of your brain. And so, do you play an instrument or sing?
I come from a musically talented family, but I do not. I did play the piano when I was younger, but that was it. But my dad used to like to play in bands, and he played the guitar. And my claim to fame, I guess, is we're kin to the Frugers in Louisiana, and Benny Fruger sent a piano up, a baby grand up. He had a piano store. Sent it up here for my kids to learn how to play the piano. Benny's brother, they used to all play in Vegas together, all the Frugers. And Benny's brother produced one of the Rocky soundtracks. So if you ever look at Rocky 2 or 3, I think, and look at the producer, the music producer is Ed Fruger.
Get out of here.
Ed Fruger is related to Ken Bernard in Douglasville, Georgia, believe it or not.
Baton Rouge, you have to have some music.
That's right. So, but, I don't know that I'm as musically inclined as my family.
Yeah.
but I made sure my kids were.
Well, good. Now I'm going to transition into University of Georgia.
Okay.
We were just there last week with Olivia. She's doing college tours because she's a senior. Man, the campus is
Phenomenal.
Oh my goodness. We were just like, okay, turn the map to the side. Let's try to see where we're going. It is just an excellent, it's gotten so competitive, and it's a great school. We have a lot of our friends' children are there. Dee Dee Phillips, I don't know if you know her. Her daughters, Madison and Mackenzie, are there, and they're good friends with Joel and IB. So that's one of Olivia's choices. So we went there first, and I don't know if we can top UGA. We've been getting stuff on Facebook like, I'm a double dog, and do dog, and go dogs, and so, wow.
Well, I have to first, on camera, apologize to my in-laws and my wife who went to Auburn.
Oh, my brother-in-law's at Auburn.
I married into an Auburn family, but I'm going to say go dogs. And I would tell anybody, if the children can get into the University of Georgia nowadays, I don't think I could. I don't think nowadays, you know, back when I went, if you pay taxes in Georgia, you could go to Georgia. I think now it's a little bit different, but if you can get in Georgia, you need to go be a dog, and that'll help hopefully save your parents a little bit of money with the Hope Scholarship. But it's world class. I mean, I'd say this, I hear it all the time, and we've got a lot of great public colleges and universities in Georgia, and we're very blessed to have those. One, you know, there's two paths, I think, that the future generation's taking. And I'm trying to learn millennials and the younger group. I don't even know the name, but I'm trying to learn because I want to be one so bad.
I know that's right.
But the path is, you know, these people come out as serial entrepreneurs when they're teenagers. And so for a serial entrepreneur who wants to be work for themselves and go in their own business, selling college is hard to explain. But what I would tell all those serial entrepreneurs is this: yes, there are Bill Gates who got in Harvard, dropped out, and became the world's richest man. But there's something about the college experience that rounds people, that builds lifelong friendships that you won't have if you don't do that. And, you know, put that piece of paper on the wall someday. You may not need it if you work for yourself.
That's right.
But by God, it's a good thing to have. Because the world that we're competing with outside of the U.S. and in the U.S., it's all about the papers. I tell, when I go talk to folks about, okay, well, how do you do this? Or how do you prepare for college? Or how do you get in college? I say, when you go to your class, whether it's middle school, well, now elementary school, middle school, high school, your competition is not sitting around you.
That's right.
It's not the friends in that classroom. It's somebody at another school that is working their tail off to get that seat, to get that opportunity. And so you've got to be on your game from day one. You know, we used to do the Military Academy Review Board. I was on that board in this congressional district for a long time. And when we used to meet kids, they'd never made a B in their life.
Wow. Amazing.
And so when the other kids got there who decided to put it on when they became 10th graders, they kind of played around 9th grade, they realized, I've got straight A's since 10th grade. That kid's got straight A's since kindergarten.
Gosh.
The world is very competitive, and that's not to say grades alone should define somebody. I'm one that didn't, you know, my son is blessed with, he could take a standardized test and kill it. If his daddy took it, it would be a little difficult because standardized tests are very challenging for some people. But make yourself better at it. The way I passed, you know, I knew when I took the bar exam, the first part of the bar exam was multiple choice, multi-state. And then if you passed that and scored a high enough score, then they graded your essays for the state portion. So I took the book and took a course, but I took the book, and every night I do 20 questions. And whether it's contracts, torts, and I looked at those questions, and I had a formula. If I knew the answer because I derived it, I just put a check.
Wow.
If I knew the answer because I got it down to 2 and I guessed, I'd put a half of a check mark. And if I totally had no clue, I'd put a question mark. And I went back, and then I would compare the answers sheet to my answers. And the ones that I did not get on my own, I memorized. Because if you think about a standardized test, how many times can they ask you how many red barns are there, black barns or purple barns. They just change the color.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, without joking, kids need to take that test seriously too,
Yes,
because now colleges, they're getting these kids with all these great scores, and they're coming from high school with great grades, and they've done everything. They started their own business. They are Eagle Scouts. They're blah, blah, blah. That standardized test, while it's being counted at most schools still, is important. Now, I will tell you, there's a move in higher education to get away from standardized tests. I don't know how that's going to work out in the long run. But as we always say, whatever the game is, you need to know the rules.
I know that's right.
So.
And that piece of paper will level the playing field. It doesn't matter when you have it, when you have your degree. They don't account where you've come from, your socioeconomic status, your parents. It levels the playing field. So
JT really had an opportunity to intern with a big management firm that was in the hotels, and he went to a board meeting in Texas with the owner of this business, and he got to meet everybody around the room, and everybody around the room educated,
wow.
Ivy League, this, that.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that Ivy League is that important, but my point is the world that we're facing when we walk out of Douglas County, they're going to have those pieces of paper. They may not use them, but they got them in their back seat, right?
That's right.
So.
And when I went to the agency, that test was just crazy. And this aptitude, academic, intelligence, they won't let you in.
That's right.
So we just have to master that, and like you're saying, be more competitive, and be serious about education. It opens doors. It really does. Speaking of education, you served on the Board of Regents.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so much community stuff. We haven't even talked about lawyering, but just tell me community, like Board of Regents, I don't know, you were appointed by the governor to all. Just tell me about, just a little.
Well, you know, a lot of different things just fell into place in my life, and you can tell. I think if you walk the right walk, things just sort of work out. And I want to say this: it's very important. We're talking about my life a little bit, but I did a commencement address at Columbus State one time, and I said to the graduates, I said, if you spend all your life trying to build a resume, you won't live a life. The best resumes are a life well lived, right? So while I'm happy about the things I've gotten to do and the experiences have been terrific, I don't encourage people just to seek out, go sit on a board to sit on a board.
I understand. They seek you out.
Yeah, if you don't do anything real in life, you really haven't lived.
That's right.
But I got invited by the governor back in the early 2000s to be on the Greta board. That was my first stint with a higher end statewide board, and then a couple of years later they asked me to go to the Board of Regents. And I'm looking around the room, and you got all these, you know, type A multimillionaires who obviously, and it is just a great experience. And that's not to say that that you have to be a millionaire on there. I wasn't. I was. I can't. You know, I was raised for a while in the 70s by a single mama on welfare, and I like to tell that story. So I've been on both ends of the stick, and most people assume, well, Kenny had a silver spoon. Far from the truth. In 1975, when we were on welfare, my mother was working on Fulton Industrial at a warehouse making $2.25 an hour.
Wow.
But those kinds of experiences, experiencing guilt about being poor, experiencing not being able to buy, back then, a 5-second snow cone after a ball game, experiencing being on a rec team and not being able to get the football jacket because we couldn't afford it. Listen, that made me who I am. Being poor is the best thing that's ever happened to me because I don't take anything for granted. I don't take people for granted. I don't take my blessings for granted. I don't take anything for granted. So my point is to the person out there that feels like I'm never going to get out of this hole, trust me, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You just got to keep working. You got to pick yourself up and move those boots and do it the right way. Don't take shortcuts. Don't cheat. And you'll find that life rewards you. But anyway, so I'm sitting on the Board of Regents. At the time, I was probably 40 years old. And I was the second youngest at the time on the board at that time. And I felt like I had a duty to the people like me that had backgrounds to try to articulate that a lot of these kids, if they're not even, you know, you'll take an athlete and go show them around here's where you work out, here's where you eat, here's your tutor. They're kids like me that when I applied to the University of Georgia in 1982, I guess, or 81, we didn't know the difference between the business school and arts and sciences.
Right.
So I'm filling out the application. I picked arts and sciences even though I don't have a talent in my bone for arts or sciences. I just felt like it'd be easier to get in than the business school because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
But, you know, by the grace of God, I got in. I got a political science degree and a minor in criminal justice, and I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And thank God I got in law school, and the rest is sort of history.
Wow. That's a story. I don't even know where to, I'm scratching. I don't know where to go.
But I do want to say about our vets, though. It's very, very important. You asked me earlier about tell us something funny, and I have some great stories when I got out in the fleet. When I got to California, I thought, my goodness, I've never seen that water before. So blue and so cold, beautiful.
And the people are pretty. Everyone's attractive.
Everybody
in
works
California.
out, everybody's skateboarding, everybody's wearing a bathing suit, and you're trying to figure yourself out. Now, I will say this. When I was in California, bald-headed with no money, it was a different experience. I went back later in life, and I had a credit card and a little bit of money with my wife, and the experience was much different. But when I got to the fleet,
oh my God.
my first, I tell the story because it's true. A Few Good Men was being filmed.
Oh,
Tom Cruise, that was filmed in that was filmed in the late 80s, early 90s, I believe.
Nicholson.
But anyway, I was in California. Some of my friends are in that movie as backup people in the back. But I got to my first duty assignment, and the first person I met was Major Walt Pansley, who that story was loosely based on. He'd been in Guantanamo, and they'd changed around, but supposedly he was sort of loosely that story. And he was from New York, and I'm from the South, and you know, when he heard my accent, I thought he was kind of. I thought I was going to be. You've seen the movie Officer and Gentleman whenever Louis Gossett Jr. meets Richard Gere for the first time. Yeah. Well, I felt like, here we go. It was deja vu, right? So I got my files, and I'm walking down to Kwanzaa Hut. There's no place for me to put down anything, and I get to the end of the hallway, and I realize there's that broom closet sitting there. And I thought to myself, do I really want to go ask that Major Bansley anything? I said, heck no. I cleaned out the broom closet. I started practicing law from the broom closet. Nobody said anything to me, but it got me accepted by the group because I just persevered with it. I didn't let it affect me.
Wow.
It was the funnest part of my life, and I tell that story all the time.
Closet.
The broom closet was my first legal office, if I don't count Joe Fowler's office back in the day. But anyway, so from that, you just sort of learn how to pick the pieces up and just go with it. But the Marines have been very good. I had opportunity to do both defense work and then prosecution work, and then eventually I got to serve as a legal assistance officer. And during Desert Storm, the buildup of the reservists, they were coming from businesses. They were getting sued because their pay went from this to this. And so I got a big chance to be involved with the dependents and represent dependents, which really sort of kicked off my civil practice because I hadn't done it before then really in any major way. And I will say this, and I've said it, the country needs to, and I think it really does, appreciate our veterans, our active duty, our reservists. But as importantly as they are, and as importantly as the people that have shed blood, tears, and everything else for this country, body, limbs, parts, the families make one of the biggest sacrifices. And I spent a lot of time with the families. And so that's sort of what compelled me when I got back, was getting out. I have told the story. I was in a big office building in Atlanta. I thought I was going to go work for one of the biggest firms in Atlanta, and I looked out that window and I said, I don't need to be here. I need to go out to West Georgia, to my community in Douglasville, and go serve the people and my neighbors, because I want them to have the lawyer that they think they can get in Atlanta that's right down the street from them. And our practice was the coincidence of how this worked. John had worked at a big practice, and he was doing plaintiff's work. We got together and decided to be here, and just the timing was perfect. I mean, we got here in '92, 26 years we've been together.
Gosh.
We've witnessed and been part of the growth of Douglas County and Douglasville, and the people have been very good to us. And so I wouldn't leave this practice to do anything else because it means that much to us.
Wow. Well, thank you. And you're right downtown Douglasville.
Right now, I walked
I know,
over,
around
Mayor.
the corner.
I walked over.
And that building, your offices are just, it's a feat for how you've transformed that office. It's beautiful. It really is the standard for other offices. I've seen, first, right down the street from you, Deuce, the new guy with the real estate and the Development Authority and different places. I said, they must have come in here and peeked at Sheridan Bernard to see how.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. We had a great experience with that. We were in the old stucco two-story building by the old courthouse when we first started out. And in the late 90s, we decided to buy that building. And it was really configured differently then. But we worked with an architect and worked with the city and tried to come up with a plan that was conducive for what the historic district needed to look like, but also was an upgrade on the building. And literally that building, which I think what somebody has told me is probably a 20s style craftsman building built in the 20s or maybe the teens, but probably the 20s. Everything on it is new for the most part, except for there's really two halves of the building. You can't tell because we dropped the soffit line where they line up almost straight across. The back half of the building, everything is new. The front half is the historic building, and except for the outside wall and the interior wall, what's in between is historic.
No way. You went to the HPC, they let you get away with it.
We built that. Well, it took a lot of work back then.
Yeah.
But that building is as restored as you can get it for safety reasons. But it's a mixture of new and old. And if you look at our hardwoods, for instance, they don't match. And the reason why they don't match is the darker pine you can't replace. You can't find anything to match it. So we left that in, and where we opened up the hallways, we put new in. And we said, that's just going to be our taste bud on this thing. It is what it is. We're not getting rid of those hardwood floors. Those hardwood floors were buried under 3 layers of carpet that had been glued down.
Wow.
And when we took the first layer off, we took the second layer off, we took the third layer, said, there's no telling what we're going to find under here. And we found, and we didn't know they were gorgeous at the time, but we found those hardwoods, and we got somebody to come in, and when they restored those hardwoods, it was like a blessing fell on us. So that's the original floor for the most part.
Wow.
It's got a lot of things holding it up. It's got a lot of crutches, but it can still walk, right?
It does. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Now, you said you work with Joe Fowler, another icon in the community.
Joe has been a good friend of mine and a mentor. I used to call him, well, he used to be Little Joe to everybody. And Little Joe back in the day, when Joe was probably 32 years old, Joe was the county attorney. Kenny Bernard was 19 years old at the University of Georgia, a sophomore, and I got a call from somebody that said, you need to go ask Joe if you can get a job. Okay? I called Joe up, and they gave me a summer job. And so I got to tell you the story, though, because while I love Joe, I got to tell you what my real experience was. So I come the first day, my only coat. I put a tie on. 19-year-olds don't wear ties. I had one for some khakis on. I felt real good. And Joe and them were approximately where the Chamber of Commerce is, and the O'Neill room of Regions Bank. There was a building there. That's where they were back in the day, the old post office, I think, or it was right next to the old post office. But long story short, so I showed up dressed up thinking I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm 19. I'm not even a sophomore. I've just completed my second year of college, right? And Martha Mullins at the time, who was managing partner, she married Mike Hartley's brother and became Martha Mullins Hartley. And now Martha's retired down in Pine Mountain, I believe. But Martha pulled me into her office, and it was Mike Hartley, Walter Rowe, Joe, and Martha at the time. And maybe Jeff, I think Jeff was there. Maybe Jeff had gotten there. She said, Kenny, I just want you to know you looked handsome today. Do you mind wearing jeans the rest of the summer? All you're going to be doing is moving boxes.
Oh, Lord.
And so Joe Fowler's office today, the person that moved every single box that went to that office, he's sitting on your stage right now from the old post office location by myself.
You were a courier. I mean, you were.
I was the moving. They got a darn good deal, $5 an hour, I think. So I can literally say my legal profession started at the very bottom. In fact, I don't know that you can get any lower than the box boy. I was the box boy for Joe for a while.
That's funny. But that's a good relationship you've had. And now you're the county attorney.
Been the county attorney. I think we're going on 14, 15 years as county attorney. It's been that long, believe it or not.
And you know who, oh my gosh, Madam Chair, every time, she's, I just love my county attorney. I love Kitty Bernard. I love my Marine, because she's like, well, she was married to a Marine for 20 years. Yeah. And so she's just, she really respects you. Well,
and I appreciate that. You know, as a lawyer, when you're working for a government, the politics is politics. Yeah. The lawyering is the lawyering, and we try to give our best advice. We try to protect our client, the county, and the government. And I think Madam Chair has given us a chance to do that, and we appreciate her for letting us do that. It's rare that you get an opportunity to work for a group of individuals to just let you be the lawyer and not get in all the other stuff. And so we value the Board of Commissioners and their appreciation for what we do. Yeah,
and we have to have good counsel. I mean, it's Mr. Dotson, Colonel Dotson. I wouldn't trade Joel Dotson for all.
I love Joe. I've had some cases with Joe. I mean, Joe one time, the county and the city were getting sued, and we were trying the case together. And Joe sat back, didn't say much, and he got up and said something like, "Your Honor." And Joe, I think, said probably 2 sentences and then sat down. And I leaned over, I said, he needs to be the darn judge. He sounds like a judge.
He is.
Man, a few words, but I love Joe. Joe's we've had a great relationship, and Susan Littlefield, obviously, we've had a great relationship with Susan. But, you know, what brought us into this, I have to give some kudos to our good friend Ed Murray, who you know.
Oh, yes.
One day I was trying a case in the old courthouse, and I looked back, and Mr. Murray sitting in the back of the courtroom. I'm like, are you on jury duty or something? Why are you here during a break? He goes, I just want to see you try a case.
Wow.
I said, why is that? He said, we may be interested in using you. We need the school board at the time. We need a lawyer that's been to court. And so it never dawned on me about ever representing, you know, them. And the long story short is this. I think our government experience, what's made us successful, is one that we've been around great people who took our advice and counsel, who listened to us, but they appreciate the fact that, you know, if you want to stay out of the courtroom, you have to have been to the courtroom, right? You can't read it in the book, you can't read it online, you can't read it in the newspaper. You have to know how you get to court, to know how you avoid court. And I think that we've been given that opportunity, but our firm is a litigation firm. I mean, interestingly, out of everybody involved in government, we're one of the few that we're plaintiffs lawyers. I mean, we do, you know, workers' comp, wrongful death, personal injury, car wrecks, nursing home neglect cases, malpractice cases, and that is our forte. But because of that, we've had so much dealing with insurance companies, and that, you know, and the fight with insurance companies and everything else. We know from that side how you protect this side, and what the county has given us opportunity to do that, and other governments have, and we, you know, 26 years, we value it and we appreciate it.
Wow, and you all do a wonderful job, and you represent us very well.
Thank you.
We're watching TV and we'll see it's Sheridan Bernard. I'm like, oh, that's a nice commercial. That looks real professional.
I'm gonna tell you something. We've failed. We're dinosaurs when it comes to marketing. We have not learned the art of marketing. As the community grew, we realized, you know, we don't know everybody. I mean, we'd like to, but it's not possible. And we're competing with folks that can get on a computer, and we barely know where the on switch is. that can make themselves look like they, F. Lee Bailey or Johnny Cochran or something, and they've never even been to courthouse.
Wow.
And so we're trying to I think it's hard when you're old school. It's hard to reach people who don't know you but may need you.
Yeah.
Most of our practice has always been word of mouth,
Yeah.
but there's only so many word of mouth people. So many new people are here. They have to rely on something to find people, right? So we're trying to understand the game of lawyering. I don't know that we're of the mindset completely that what we see out there. I think lawyers have inundated the TV, the news. We're on billboards now, buses, everything else. And I think what's happened to the profession as a result of it, while it may be a necessary evil to reach people who otherwise couldn't find you, the downside of it, it casts lawyers in a way that really forgets about what lawyers have done historically in our country, whether it was civil rights, whether it was voting rights, whether it was product liability cases where we protected consumers. The whole world thinks about the McDonald's coffee case and the millions of dollars. By the time that case was over, that lady never saw $1 million. The case got reduced down and this, that, and the other and everything else. But the big insurance companies want folks to think that the lawyers are the problem. Actually today, if you look back at historical trends, by population, we file less lawsuits today than we did 2 decades ago. And that trend has been going on for a long time, but folks who aren't hurt, who don't have a family member dead, who don't have an injury caused by somebody else's negligence, it's all right to think that even though it's wrong.
Yeah.
But when they are hurt, they realize there's a reason why lawyers are out there. So what I hope the legal community will do, all of us and us too, is remember our historical role as part of society as a whole.
That's right.
Do our part. I think it's very important for us to engage our community, whether it be the chamber, whether it be religious organizations, whether it be Operation Christmas.
You were in the paper for Operation Christmas.
Yeah, whatever. I think we got to give back because we don't want to be, we're not just takers.
Yeah.
We're doers.
That's right.
But we also want to make sure that we do our part because I think everybody that's blessed with something, right, ought to pass it along.
That's right.
And so we try to engage the community in a number of ways, and I'm proud of what our firm's done. You can't do it all, but we can be the starting point, right? If we're the first ones to do it and set the example and somebody else does it, and I'm not saying we are the first ones, but if we do it as individuals or as a firm or whatever, and others do it, I think the trend could give lawyers a better perception in society. Unfortunately, a lot of folks, a lot of lawyers help us get that pariah type perception, and most lawyers aren't. Most lawyers, believe it or not, are coaching your kids in baseball, paying for the uniforms, taking the underprivileged out to Six Flags, working in their churches, working to give kids toys at Christmas. Big example, I mean, you talked about Operation Christmas. Bo McLean, who's a judge, has got plenty of things to do, right? He's raised his kids, he's done everything, and he's working every day to help poor people.
He is.
And so I think it's, from our standpoint, if somebody asked me about Operation Christmas, because we're chairing it on behalf of the chamber, the chamber side of it, I said, look, I felt guilty watching Judge McLean do all this work, him and a few other people, and then a few churches, then a lot of churches, a lot of volunteers. I think if we all do it, there's not going to be one kid that ever has to worry about getting a Christmas present, right?
That's right.
So I would tell your audience, Operation Christmas, Dropbox, any of the 650 members of the chamber, if you go on the Douglas County Chamber website, there's a link, we'll bring a box to you. If we're trying to get every needy child from K through 17, and it's important for our teenagers too, and I'll say why in a minute, a new, unwrapped, I have to get all the spiel out, a new, unwrapped, unopened gift for Christmas, and they're identified by working with the school system.
That's right.
And also other social departments, people in need or people in distress. we're focusing as a chamber on teenagers this year because we've to add to an element of what we already have. Because as you know, when you're a teenager and you're you've got hard times in your family, hard economic times or whatever, that's when you're sort of developing your self-esteem, right? That's when you start caring about how your hair looks, or what clothes you wear, or who you associate with. And kids need to feel important, because if they don't feel important, they're going to turn to things that will destroy their lives: sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever else. They when they go down that path, they're more likely to drop out of school. And we can do something about that. If we have a community that supports our kids, look, I tell somebody, if you open one gift and it doesn't change a kid's life, so be it. But that's one time you tried to make somebody smile who maybe was going to be crying on Christmas, right?
That's right.
So we're hopeful Operation Christmas, the whole community. Listen, we've already reached 26,000 kids thanks to Judge Bo McLean and his group and all the churches and nonprofits. We think with the chambers adding to the effort, we can reach these teenagers who are at risk, and it'll just be an added element. So please, to your audience, help support the cause. You know, I tell my kids, we can do without Christmas if we had to, and we probably should. But cut down a little bit and give to somebody that really needs it. And a good learning lesson for your kids is when they go shopping with you for somebody else, because then they realize this really is about somebody else, as opposed to I just got one less thing. Oh, Lord, my list of 10 things became 9. Take your kids shopping. Go to Walmart, Target, or wherever you want to go. Go online. Help them be involved in it and explain to them why, and help them go deliver that gift.
Wow.
Because the esteem, the self-esteem that child who's donating to another child gets from that transaction, you'll be shocked what it does to that child. Because we all need to learn. We all need to learn how to give and not just take.
That's right. And you're not a pariah. I mean, you help so many people. You've helped me politically, just with advice. And everyone said, if you want the guru, if you want the political guru, go and talk to Kenny Bernard. And you could have said, you don't look like me. I don't think I'm going to help you. But you didn't say that.
Mayor, let me just say this. I've been very impressed with you as a person before you ever became mayor. You know that. And I tell folks all the time, the best thing we all can do as a community, all of us can do, is go support people, not things, not objects, not whatever. Go support people that have it right in their heart. And listen, military vets, CIA, that's all I needed to hear. I figure if you could get that kind of clearance, you'd probably be all right for the city.
Well,
but no, it's listen, I think, you know, when we put the mayor on a pedestal, you are a great public servant, and we appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you so much. That's so wonderful. And thank you for what you do. Thank you for continuing to smile and serve in the governance committee with the chamber. You don't have to give your time. You have 3 daughters still at home, 15 years old, freshmen. There's lots for you to do. You're trying to get your son to, and you know what? Something you said about your mom being single, and I see all these pictures with you and your dad. What compassion. That's what I'm saying, you're not a pariah. How did you connect back and have such a, you and your dad look like, that's my bud.
Well, I got to tell you the story, and I'm not going to choke up, but my dad died this summer. But I'm going to tell you the story because I think it's important for people to hear.
You know, my mom passed too this year.
I think it's important for people to hear. In 1975, we went through, my parents were college sweethearts and had been married 17 years, and there was a separation and things got really rough as far as finances. And my dad was sort of out of my life, but at some point in time, he kept trying to communicate, and of course I had that I hate you approach.
Yeah.
But I didn't hate him.
Right.
I felt like my arm had been cut off, so to speak.
Right.
I was heart wounded.
Yeah.
And at some point, probably in my 20s, early 20s, we had maintained some communication, but it had been nominal. I sort of realized that it takes 2 to tango. I'm not going to get into why my parents got a divorce. I don't know that that matters.
Relationship, yeah.
You know, I don't necessarily condone it or want people to get divorced, but it happens, right? And whatever happened to me just made me stronger. It wasn't my dad trying to make me go through heck. It was the consequence.
Yeah.
And so I tell people a story all the time because I think we need to think about our children when we are going through those kind of times, that if we put them first and foremost, look, you can replace the car and the microwave and the dog. You can't replace those kids.
I know that's right.
And I think in my early 20s, I realized while we had been distant for probably a decade, but had some communication, that's my only dad I've got, right?
Yeah.
So as time went on, it just got to the point where we on our own normalized the relationship, and he'd fly up to Atlanta, and we'd fly him up, we'd go down there and see him. And I have to tell this story about my dad because I told it when he was at his funeral.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Some people hurt people, but they don't really intend to hurt people.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it's not a consequence, but it's just that we can't see everything, right? As humans, we want to see. But I see you, but I don't know what's going on behind you at the house or, with your son at college, other than what I hear. And I think what we got to do is we got to take give people a little bit more credit for being human beings, and my dad became very close. We were close, and then we were separated, and then we were real close again.
Yeah.
And I give my mom a lot of credit, and I think this is very important for your audience. My mother probably had a lot of reasons to say all kinds of negative things about my dad, but never did.
Wow.
She encouraged the relationship. She, I knew deep down inside she loved my dad, and my dad loved my mom. And as it turned out in years, that perpetuated in the back of my mind. He's not a bad guy.
That's right.
So we had a great relationship. I'm 54, so for 30-something years we've been playing golf and going to the casinos and doing whatever together. But the reason for that bond was I realized that's my dad. And I tell people all the time, you may be going through heck. I was 11 years old. I get it.
Yeah.
I've been there. But you can't let it eat you up.
That's right.
If it eats you up, it becomes who you are, and that's not who I was.
That's right.
That's not who I was.
A lot.
So yeah, it's been a challenge because I still visualize him in a lot of scenarios now. But we had some dang good years, and I know God was good to him. He was, as I told you earlier, he was a vet from Vietnam, and I will say this: the VA in his final years really took care of him down in Louisiana. And I very much appreciate that because he had a lot of health issues. And so, but he went out on his own terms, and he's in a good place now.
That's right. And that's what my father, VA did really well for him as well. He had cancer and he passed, but they were wonderful. And, my sister has a flag because she's the oldest, but it was just a moving experience. And so I appreciate them as well. Thank you for sharing that with me. You didn't have to do that.
Well, I think we humanize.
Seeing all those pictures, and it's part of being a lawyer. You didn't have to just know the UCMJ and Georgia law and whatever else and tort, and it's part of lawyer is counselor. Advocate, all those things, and they have to come into play to have those relationships.
I will say this. I think the most important quality when you're looking for a lawyer, and it doesn't have to be us, it can be anywhere. You can be in Canada right now or Alaska or wherever, is you have to have a bond with your lawyer of trust. And to build that bond, lawyers have to be real. If a lawyer sounds like a salesman, that's not the lawyer you need. Right. You need somebody that's going to tell you the good, bad, and ugly. And I tell people all the time, I said, you're not paying me to be emotional. Not paying to lay on the couch and me hold your hand. You're paying for me to wrap my arms around your problem and help you solve them for you. And so I'm going to tell you good things and bad things, but I'm doing it because you need to understand. And I find when lawyers communicate well with their clients and the client knows what's going on as opposed to sitting home wondering what's going on, when they know what's going on, they're never upset. They can digest most anything eventually, right? I think one of our faults as a profession is sometimes we get so overwhelmed with today, tomorrow, and the next day, we forget about the person home waiting for the phone call.
Wow.
So I have a rule in my office. If somebody calls, we call them that day. If we can't call them that day, somebody else from my office call them, tell them why we can't. If I'm in court and can't call you, I can't call you. and somebody's going, can I help you?
Wow.
Because what people want when they're in need is an emotional response. They want to get this that's on their shoulder and move it and give it to you.
That's right.
Take this ball and move it off my shoulder so I can sleep good tonight. And I think if lawyers as a profession responded more, if they communicate, if they share with the client what's going on, and that's easy. Look, when we write a letter, we send a copy to the client. Why? Because the client gets the letter, they see what's going on with the case. That we don't need to talk 10 times. They see they see work going on, right? So I have a rule that anything goes out, the client gets copied on. Simple as that. Now, they don't get emails because if you send a client an email and they respond to it, they may be responding to the wrong party.
That's right.
But we try to in our firm communicate. If you communicate, that's 99% of the lawyer-client problems are solved. The 1%'s the case, and we can handle 1%, and that's what we do. That's what we've been doing for 30 years.
Wow. Well, thank you. That JAG. That's all I need to hear. I need to hear Marine Corps JAG. I'm done. That's all I need to hear.
I got to tell you, I got the lapel on today.
I see it. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why I love the Marine Corps, whose birthday's coming up. In fact, the commandant was running with the troops this morning. Commandant's got wrapped knees, and he's a 4-star general, but he's still out there with the troops.
See, that's
in
what
the front
I know.
Running.
That's what they say. My friend told me to come for interrupting you. This is amazing to me. Mr. Cunningham, who was in the Army and the Marine Corps, said he didn't want to say, I forgot to ask him which was best, and he said, you don't have to ask me, you already know. He said the commandant was on his phone or something, and he passed by him and he said, hey, good morning, sir, and he didn't have a uniform on. He said, I went in to buy something. He came back in and said, hey, Marine, I'm sorry I didn't speak to you. He said, I'm thinking, are you serious? The commandant never does that. He said, but if he says for everyone to wear a short sleeve shirt and he said all across the country, that's what they're going to do. He said other branches, they're going to say, well, this is my base, I'm not doing that, and I'm not saying anything about anyone else. Yeah. But it's just, that's the
Listen,
Marines.
I met General Al Gray was a commandant of the Marine Corps. I met him in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina in 1988. During my summers, when I was in law school, I'd go back on active duty for the summer, and then I'd get on inactive reserve while I was going to law school. And I met the commandant of the Marine Corps at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I was standing at in the officers' quarters, getting scissors to cut my web belt, because you got to measure the belt before you go to work. And mine was a little long, so I was trimming it. And I turned around, my pants were undone, my belt's open, and General Al Gray, 4-star general, standing right there, by himself, not with a bunch of guards and teams and all that, in plain clothes.
He's sweating.
And I'm thinking to myself, and I knew immediately who it was. I locked up. He goes, just relax, Lieutenant. I know you take care of your business. And the guy asked him, he goes, the clerk was a civilian. He said, sir, how's the Marine Corps going? He goes, it's going fine, thanks to my fine lieutenants. And he patted me on the back.
Wow.
And that man was there for one reason that day. They had built new quarters, and he was inspecting him. This is a 4-star general from 8th and I down in Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C., came to Camp Lejeune to inspect what had been built for the troops. There's something about Marine Corps leadership that they taught us, and that is probably a lot of things, but the 3 things that sort of stand out to me. Number one, if you can't do it, why is that 17-year-old going to do it? So if you can't lead from the back on a horn, if you're not willing to go over that wall, why is he going to do it? So they run. When I was at TBS, I had a captain that was a tanker that was over our platoon. Poor man, he was built like a sledgehammer, but he couldn't run.
Wow.
But he got out there in front of everybody and ran. He spit the whole way, choking and everything else, but he made the whole run. He made all the hikes because that was the duty. And the second thing is, when you're communicating the mission, and I think in life we forget about what is the mission today.
Come on.
But when you're communicating about the mission, it's one thing if you understand it with your college degree, and it's another thing that your salty gunnery sergeant has been around 25, 30 years understands it. But if that 18-year-old private who just got there 6 weeks ago and he's been to boot camp at Paris Island or MCRD in San Diego, if he doesn't understand the mission, how is that platoon going to be successful?
Right.
So we learned very early you have to be able to communicate with everybody.
Wow.
Everybody all the way down. And the last thing I'll say about Marines, I think the esprit de corps has been built by years of people gave a lot of blood, a lot of sacrifices. I still have a big time problem watching a historic footage of Iwo Jima or, you name it, Korea, Vietnam. It breaks me up because I know what those people went through, not because I've been through it, but they had the audacity, the courage to go through it. And here we are, we're worried about what we're going to eat for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
Those guys may not have eaten for a week, and they're hiking in the snow of Korea, freezing. People are dying with. Their documentary was showing some film for the Marines in North Korea, and they literally almost froze to death.
Lord have mercy.
And one guy was injured in the boot. They went to take the boot off. His whole foot came off. It froze off.
Gosh almighty.
If you don't appreciate
I know it.
our country,
I know it.
if you don't understand the price, and I got to say this, it's a little bit of politics, but I got to say it. And this is not a conservative or liberal or anything else. This is just a message from a Marine. There is no global economy without the United States of America.
That's right.
When Europe was tore up in World War II, who rebuilt Europe? America.
That's right.
In World War I, when they were all tore up, who rebuilt them? America. In World War II, when we dropped a bomb on Japan, who rebuilt them? America. If there's not a force in readiness, and I'm not saying we need to be the police of the world,
Right.
but if nobody has the force that can protect everybody, what do you think is going to happen? We're going to have tyrants run all over the place. And you don't have to worry about your global economy. Your global economy is gone. Wall Street's gone if there's no freedom. And I only say that because I get it that we trade with world partners. We're one at the table with a lot of people, blah, blah, blah. But nobody has invested in the world more than the United States of America. And the only way the United States of America can invest in the rest of the world is, number one, we are free to make that choice.
That's right.
And so I hope during Veterans Day that everybody will get on bended knee.
That's right.
And we'll think about the sacrifice of the people who's come before us and the kids that are out there right now.
That's right.
That they see so much that we will never appreciate. The people in Vietnam saw stuff that you can't see you can't go to a movie that's R-rated and see, believe it or not. They saw it right next to them.
That's right.
And so I want everybody to do me one favor during Veterans Week, day, every day celebrate America, because that's why they did what they did. Second, when you see a vet, pat them on the back, buy them a cup of coffee, do something, pass it on.
Yeah.
And secondly, pray.
That's right.
For the people out there doing it today.
That's right. Well, thank you. You're getting me emotional because I have a lot of family that served, and my niece is there now, and another cousin. So I appreciate you. But you've given some good advice to help us to appreciate veterans and that 1% of Americans who at any time will put themselves on the line. I understand that our National Guard is being deployed in Douglasville, Douglas County. So we need to, we just gave a lot of people in the city, employees of the city, gave to the USO on Monday.
That's
and
correct.
so they came in and said that it was right on time because our National Guard unit was going to be deployed. So,
well, every one of our services could use more people. The hardest thing is to attract qualified candidates to serve at every level, no matter what branch of service, or reservists, Air National Guard, Coast Guard, Air Force, Army, Navy, and Marines. But right now, while we're living in a free country, less than 1% of us are out there preserving it.
That's right.
So in your actions every day, and I say this, I don't care if folks actually join the armed forces.
Right.
I'd love for everybody to do it. I know everybody can't do it. But what I'd love for them to do is thank those people, treat them right, and also value the benefit that you get from being in a free country.
That's right.
You know, we had elections yesterday, and you know, where else can you have elections and be so divergent society, and it's
know.
still done peacefully, and it's, you know, we got our problems in the country. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that we're perfect, but we can have the flexibility to be imperfect, right? Because
That's
we're
right.
creatures of God.
That's right.
But I sort of believe at the end of the day that there's an America because God wanted there to be.
Amen. Amen. Well, that's perfect to end on. Thank you so much for your service to our country, your service to our community. You make us proud, and you're from Douglas County. You're in the city of Douglasville. I really appreciate you, your friendship and your example, your fatherhood, husband, community leader. Thank you so much, Kenny Bernard. Thank you, Marie, for your service.
Thank you for your service.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Love you. This has been another tradition. Oh gosh, been another edition of Positively Douglasville. God bless you.